Hi there, afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Live with Little Data. I'm Edward, your host, and I'm here today with Hassan from Magna Monster. Welcome.
Hi guys, hi Ed, how's it going?
Good. Well, thanks for coming on the live stream. Yeah, I guess we wanted to follow up for those of you who didn't follow. We had a bit of an episode with Wunderkind 2 weeks ago when they basically took offence to my competitor comparison page, where I'm trying to make a fair comparison of what Little Data does and what Wunderkind does, because we're both in the same space. We both talk about boosting audiences for Klaviyo. Both talk about being able to convert more customers, but our products work in very different ways, and I'm trying to be very clear that we're not the same.
Yeah,
And then Wunderkind decided to send me a cease and desist letter from the legal team, wanting the page to be taken down, which I objected to. And I think, having had a lot of feedback after that LinkedIn post, a lot of comments, I feel like I'm still sure that I'm on solid ground in terms of what I'm claiming, and I'm not claiming anything that's untrue. But therefore, I thought it'd be, because obviously, you've worked with some clients using the solution and
yeah,
generally work with a lot of customers on Klaviyo. It'd be good just to talk through a little bit about what is the difference, what is Wunderkind doing that's different to what Little Data's doing, and then a bit more about whether that is a net positive or negative for the brands you work with.
yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I thought let's maybe break it down by sort of different areas of comparison. So I think maybe first of all, let's talk a bit about what is the promise, what is the product aiming to do.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how would you sort of sum up what Wonderkind's claiming to do?
yeah. So I think if we put it into simple words, what Wunderkind is doing, it's basically getting more people onto your list, but it's just not people who want to be on your list, basically, because they're pulling off of data from lists that they've gathered, and they call it first party data, but I wouldn't necessarily 100% agree that it is first party data, just because it's come from different sources, different brands, probably giveaways, partnerships, and all of that stuff. So how do you really know that, yes, that person might have visited your website and now you have their email in your Klaviyo account? But I would say it's, if they really wanted to be on your email list, they would have signed up, because ideally you do have a sign up form, you do have a form in the footer, you have a checkout page. And if they would have taken some action, they would have been on your list. But I think just scraping their email from different lists and started to blast out emails to them to try and convert them is just not a good idea for your account. Whereas on the other side, I think if we talk about Little Data and what it does, it's the good thing that we didn't know 100% is that these are people who are actually consented to email marketing, and they have signed up and they are already on your list. And due to privacy reasons or just tracking issues, their cookies got deleted or whatever, and now those events were firing. And now Little Data is just helping you track those people who are actually interested in your brand and trying to add revenue to your brand's overall revenue stream. So I think that's the main difference in my
Yeah.
opinion. And I don't think there really is a comparison. They're totally two separate products. Yes, the goal is list growth and revenue growth, but the way that it's being done is, I would say, different.
Yeah, and you're right. It's just this word "first party," which is quite misunderstood. Maybe worth a few follow-up posts on that. But what we understand first party data, and when we talk about first party data in Little Data, we mean that the customer, the end customer who's buying from you as a brand, has actually given, as you say, they've given you their email. They've said, "Look, I've signed up. I'm signing up to give you the right to market to me. And by the way, I can withdraw that at any point if I want to."
Yeah,
Um, and we're simply, as you say, identifying people who've already done that to you, who are also active on your storefront.
yeah,
Um, and a lot of the time, that's not, necessarily people. Yeah, that's not people who actually said, "I don't want to be tracked" either. It's
yeah,
just that browsers and the way Shopify works has made it a lot harder to track users across different
right,
sessions than it used to be.
yeah,
Um, and then what Wonderkind does is kind of hard to, I mean, it's hard to deduct, and they deliberately obscure it. But, as I read through their privacy policy, all 6,000 words of it, they clearly say, look, they basically, if you are a brand using their product, they're using your customers to build an identity graph for other customers. So,
yeah,
so that means if I'm I've given my email, Edward at Littledata, to the brand A, and then brand B, who
Gets
I don't have any direct relationship customers, sometimes getting my customer data.
yeah.
That's no one's definition of first party. It's
Yeah.
first party to brand A, yeah, for sure, but not first party to brand B. And that's sort of, I think, the heart of what I find dodgy. And I honestly don't think many customers know about this. That the Wunderkind obviously is a completely, as is Littledata, an unknown brand to consumers. Although we're powering, very few consumers know anything about Klaviyo. Let's be honest. I mean, again, that's not a brand they would know because it doesn't. Although they get email sent via Klaviyo, it doesn't say anywhere in the email that's Klaviyo. The domain name, the branding, none of that is Klaviyo, right?
Exactly.
But Wunderkind is even more obscure that they would be the brand's using that. In fact, I don't even know. It's very hard for me to find a list of Wunderkind customers. But the question I ask myself, and perhaps we'll go on to the second point here, which is about legal risk, is I'm even if they weren't sharing directly the customer emails, which, as you say, I think you think they are. In Europe, we have this thing called a right to erasure, basically a right to be forgotten in GDPR, which says, look, if I even have whether I gave you my email or not before you got it from somewhere else, I have a right to basically say, please, not just don't market to me, actually remove my details from your system. And I don't know how I'm supposed to do that with Wunderkind. I don't know how, as a customer, I could actually say, Wunderkind, please, even if I knew you brand were using it.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of customers don't even know that Wunderkind actually has their email because they just gave their email to brand A, and then brand A, just because they were in touch with Wunderkind, it got pushed to them, and from there it went to brand B. And I think the other funny thing that I saw on the website for Wunderkind the other day is in their privacy policy page, where they say that you can go ahead and not receive any marketing. You can get rid of Wunderkind. If you go and actually click that link and it says uncheck Wunderkind, Wunderkind's name is not even there.
No, let's show that quickly. Look, you scroll down to the bottom. So I say, right, I want to hang on, I need to remove that. So your ad choices, great, brilliant. I can opt out. It says, right, we some of our clients may use those third-party advertisers, but blah 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 blah. If you want to opt out, web opt out, you can go to your ad choices in the EU, right? So I'm in the UK, and here are my ad choices. I'd never actually come across this website before, but there are lots of other advertising networks on here that I might want to opt out of.
Talk about keeping unsubscribe simple.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. I mean, incredibly complicated. But it's not there. Wunderkind's not there. BounceX is not there. So it's like, what are we? How would I possibly do that? So as a brand, I know that lots of brands use it. I guess they're taking the risk, but it seems like if there was a case, if a consumer did complain to the European data regulator, they'd have, quite a strong case to say, look, brand, you've not taken care of my personal details, and you can be fined 2% of your global turnover. So, if you're a 10 million brand, that's basically, $200,000 fine.
It's not even worth it because it's
I mean, to be fair, Wunderkind's charging nearly that amount a year just to use the product.
Exactly.
So let's come on to obviously there is an uplift, and I think you've looked at a few accounts that are using that or using retention.com's Grow product. What have you generally found with the sort of the actual performance, whether it actually works?
So what we've seen is let's talk about Littledata first. We've implemented it, and server-side tracking in general. We've implemented it across several different accounts, and what we see is there's not a huge number of people going through it. There's a decent number of people going through it, comparable to what you have in your other flows, and you can clearly see that these metrics are being triggered by people who are not in your regular metrics. And so it's really simple to point out that these people entered the flow, they were triggered through this metric, and this is the incremental revenue that they've generated. And since these are people that are already on your list, deliverability metrics are also good on these flows, because we need to keep an eye out. And usually you would see if you start emailing unknown people that your spam and unsub rates shoot up. And so if we move to the Wunderkind and kind of retention grow product side, it's a sort of a similar trend that we see, because all of these people that you're trying to get onto your list and email are kind of unknown people, and they haven't given you your email willingly. Even if you set up a separate, let's say, welcome flow to try and email them and put them into a drip campaign, the unsub and spam rates that we see are significantly elevated as compared to what you would see on your normal flow from a organic audience that's coming onto your site. And what most people don't realize is they're like, oh yeah, these are cold leads. We have low open rates, low click rates, high bounce, unsubscribe and spam rates in this one flow, and that's not going to affect the rest of our account. But what that one flow is actually doing, it's trickling down into all of your other flows and destroying your deliverability. And in this day and age, especially with the new Google, Yahoo sending domain requirements, the deliverability issue is a really big one. And if you start going into spam just because you're trying to add cold leads onto your email list, it's you'll be thinking about new revenue coming from this flow, but it's actually destroying your other side of the revenue, where you were actually emailing your organic subscribers, and now
Right.
emails aren't landing in the inbox or promotions for them, they're going into spam. So even though you see a little bit of revenue come through that new group of leads that's coming into the account, what you don't see is if you have like a 10%, 15% open rate and a very high spam unsub rate, your other open rates for like campaigns and flows and all these are going to start to go down.
Yeah, right. And I mean, just let's work through the economics of that, because again, the most accounts I've seen on Klaviyo, the biggest kind of, well, they might be getting maximum 10% of their revenue from these kind of,
Mhm.
let's say abandoned
Yeah,
checkout, abandoned cart type flows. And so, yeah, you might get a big uplift on those. Maybe you get maximum another sort of 10% revenue. That'd be really the biggest uplift you might get. But
yeah,
then you're easily tanking the rest of the 90% of your revenue. You're easily tanking by that same amount. So I think that's the sort of, yeah, because obviously what Wunderkind does to justify such a high fee and it is to show you this dashboard where they say, hey, look, this is all the revenue increment we bought. But obviously what they're not showing you is the effect of the 90%.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, totally. I just think like the price point, like we talked about earlier, for a software like Wonderkind is so high. Like I know some brands that were paying like 10K or upwards for it. I just don't think the revenue that they actually generate justifies the ROI and the fee that they're charging, because in the e-com world people say, oh, it's generating 2x 3x, but
Yeah,
the tight profit margins that we have in this space, some brands we know are working on 10-15% profit margins.
yeah,
This doesn't make sense,
yeah,
because you're taking your revenue numbers higher up, but the unit economics just doesn't add up, and it's actually not profitable revenue
yeah,
that you're adding. So there's really no point. You would rather just not do that. And
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, when we look at little data, we see brands getting a 30, 40x ROI. Now, with
exactly.
that, even if you're making any 10% profit margin, it's definitely profitable
For
growth.
sure.
But again, I feel like sometimes this whole, hey, it's a great return on investment is back into the bad old days of like brands
Yeah,
not caring about profitability. Like as long as we're adding top line revenue, who cares at what
yeah,
at what
yeah,
incremental margin? So I,
for
I
sure.
think, as you say, it's got to be the uplift is there with little data. It's just that we're honestly 10x cheaper. I've heard of companies paying Wunderkind well north of 100,000 a year. Sometimes up in the sort of closer to 200,000 a year. And at that sort of price level, yeah, I mean these are big brands doing big volumes. But as you say, are they doing enough revenue just through Wunderkind's flows to justify that? Not sure. Whereas little data, as I said, it would be nearly 10x cheaper.
Exactly. Yeah. 10x cheaper. You keep your deliverability safe. You can clearly see what the revenue is coming through. You're not tanking your deliverability. And so
Yeah,
all of these things add up. And it just goes to show that, what product kind of you should have. It's also about the mindset over here. If you're talking to like a brand owner, of course, you pitch them new leads. Everyone wants more leads coming into the brand. But do cold leads really make a difference? If you're
yeah,
getting 1,000 leads, 900 of them aren't even opening the email, 100 of them are marking it as spam. And the rest of them, yeah, of course, some will buy, of course, if you're getting like huge amounts of volume going through the flows. But in the end, it really just isn't worth it in terms of actual true incremental revenue that you get.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of brands haven't sort of really internalized is kind of what even a tiny amount of spam can do to your domain credibility, and actually how hard that is to clean that back up. I mean, I'm sure you've been involved with clients who've had kind of poor domain quality scores, or whatever the right metric is for health of sender, and right, it's a big battle to sort of get that back once you're on the blacklist of different customers. So it's like, it's a risk thing. I think you might have got away with it last year. I think increasingly it's hard to get away with even a small number of spam complaints.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think you mentioned that you had one brand who tried to solve that by having a secondary domain name.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. So we were working with this brand where you had did have a dedicated sending domain set up, and I know overall deliverability just depends on the dedicated sending domain. But we had two separate email addresses within that account from which we were emailing. So let's say your normal emails were going out from hello@brandname.com, and we had
Yeah.
great deliverability. So campaigns 50% plus, open rates, good click rates, good engagement, and not high spam or bounce rates at all. And then for these flows that brand was using, Wunderkind or retention, we had new leads coming into that flow, and the open rates and the spam rates were super low. So they decided to send from a different email, so let's say support@brandname.com. And over time, as they kept getting those leads, the deliverability rating and the sender reputation of that specific email address dropped so low that if you went into the account, created a new email, the same email, even if it was plain text or design, and sent it through your normal email address, it would go into the inbox. If you send it through the email address that we were using for these cold leads coming in through retention or Wunderkind, it would go into spam right away.
Yeah.
And that email address has just been so badly deteriorated. They kept going because, of course, they were getting some sort of revenue. But again, if you go into the unit economics, it's really isn't profitable revenue that you're getting there.
Yeah, right. And I mean, then the other thing for commercially is about long-term contracts. So I know chatting to some of your customers who go locked into, multi-annual deals with Wunderkind. And in fact, one of the hilarious comments on this LinkedIn thread was them actually an ex-customer, they threatened to sue for breach of contract because their product had been unavailable for 4 months, and the Wunderkind refused to let them out of the contract. So it's hilarious that you try and sue a customer to stay with you when your product doesn't work. But I think I guess the problem about having those long contract tie-ins, multi-annual tie-ins, the problem that entails is I guess people just think, well, I've paid for it now. I'm locked in. I might as well use it, even if I'm not sure it's being used. But to that, I'd bring back to this risk thing. If you're not sure it's adding value in terms of actual true return on investment, using it still adding the risk. Still adding the spam complaints, still adding the legal risk.
Yep.
So I think there's an element to just cut your losses.
Yeah. I think you just watch out for anywhere that we've seen in the e-com space that people try to lock in. I know there's usually 2-3 month period, but just try to be on someone who offers you can easily opt out of the contract if things aren't working out for you, because some things work for some brands, others don't. So you just need to make sure that you have your bases covered and you don't end up paying 4 months worth of bill to Wunderkind.
Right. Yeah. Well, Littledata is always available if you want to get out of your contract and try something cheaper. So let's talk a little bit about obviously there's a couple of other products in the market that are doing something. We mentioned retention.com briefly. I mean, obviously what they're doing is they have two products. One is similar to Wunderkind, but to be fair, at least it says retention grow. I mean, they're honest that they're growing your audience. That's what they.
Yeah, they also say it's not too safe to use in Europe with the GDPR as well.
Yeah.
So it's mainly for the US. So at least they're honest about that.
Yeah. But I guess, with that, you've seen similar problems there in terms of spam and deliverability.
Yeah, I would think so, because anytime you're getting in cold people onto your list and trying to email them, you'll always have issues. So, retention, for example, has the other product called Reclaim, which is
Yeah.
kind of similar to what Little Data does. So I think that would just be a more logical tool to use, because these people are engaged with your brand, and
Yeah.
it's actually worthwhile trying to get more revenue for them or reach out to them where Klaviyo wouldn't have, for example.
Yeah. I guess also it depends on the size of your list. So,
Yeah.
if you don't have a very big email list, I guess it's more tempting to try and, you say, add these sort of non-consenting emails or non-opt-in emails onto there, because it
Yeah.
seems like a way to turbocharge it. If you
Mm.
already have a big brand with quite a big email list, you're probably
Yeah.
too high risk. Like what you really need there is to do the better targeting of your current list.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, with these Wunderkinds and everything, it's paying them 10K a month. If you invest into good paid ads or influencer marketing or other organic, I'd say, advertising streams that can get actual traffic onto your site, and then you have good retention systems in place on your website, like a good
Yeah.
sign up to get them onto the email list, I think something like that would yield a much better result, because now you're not trying to use backdoors and get people onto your list. You're getting actual people who are interested in your brand, and they clicked on an ad and now they're on your website, and
Yeah.
they're much more likely to purchase as compared to cold emailing other people.
Yeah, it's it's something, a topic we covered with other agencies actually on this
Yeah.
series, and I think it's something I've talked to before with Magnet Monster, that actually, email marketing doesn't exist in a vacuum. Like it's part of your wider marketing risk, and so, as you say, you can't acquire customers with email. It just that's the
Yeah.
whole point.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. It's a way of engaging customers who have already emailed you, either people who've it's a way of engaging customers who've consented to be marketed to. It may be that they haven't purchased from you yet, but they definitely, by definition, somewhat down the funnel.
Yeah.
And so, as you say, if you actually want to grow your list, then you need to grow your funnel. I mean, that's just like marketing 101, right? And there are other forms of marketing you need to invest in, as you say, influencers, social, etc., to do that.
Yep.
And I think it was fascinating that, again, hearing one of your colleagues talk about the kind of the way that you can see email marketing as sort of in synthesis with some of those other channels. Like it doesn't need to be something that you just do in isolation.
Yeah, no, of course, all parts of a marketing strategy for a brand feed into what revenue comes out of the brand in totality. So you need to be aware, and I think all teams as part of the brand need to be in touch. What you're promoting on socials, what kind of ads are you running, and then having a corresponding strategy in your email, SMS, push notifications, direct mail. Tying all of that together is really what gets you a good ROI in totality. Otherwise, if you just think, because we all know all platforms kind of try to, like, for example, Klaviyo, we do know the revenue that we see in there is sometimes overinflated because every platform just wants to show that it's making more money for you. But as long as you have a good strategy in place and things are in alignment, then I think it's all good.
Yeah, and I guess topic for another day. But as we covered in chat a couple of weeks ago, like that's the reason why you might want to go and use Google Analytics or similar to look at marketing attribution around, because
Exactly.
if Klaviyo is necessarily greedy when it comes to attribution, and
Yeah.
that's fine. I haven't met many brands, to be honest, that take Klaviyo attribution kind of at face value. I mean, they know that it couldn't possibly be doing what they claim in terms of revenue, but I think it's all relative, right? So
Relative, yeah.
the general assumption is that if Klaviyo says I did 200,000 of Klaviyo attributed value last month, and now I'm doing 300,000, then I'm doing 50% better.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
Awesome. Well, it's been a great chat. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we before we finish on that?
I think
Wunderkind?
we covered it all. We covered it all nicely, and I hope the viewers found it interesting. And yeah, lovely to chat with you always.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.